Colorado Heisman hopeful Travis Hunter was ruled out of the game against Colorado State and taken to the hospital, likely as a result of what was certainly a dirty play that occurred early in the game. In this video, we'll talk about what might have happened and why Hunter might be at the hospital. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer, and my goal in this channel is to teach you about the medical side of the sports world. So if anatomy and that sort of thing interests you, then please consider subscribing. Help support the channel and stay up to date with my videos. Let's just go straight to this play because there's no doubt, let's just get this out of the way. This was absolutely a dirty play. The ball had hit the ground. There was no reason for this hit to come in from this Colorado State defender. Think about during this hit, all the energy that Hunter has running down the field. It's similar to what we think about with like a concussion, where the head, the skull is moving, and then all of a sudden when you get hit, the brain kind of gets jostled around inside the skull because the skull stops, but everything inside continues to move. It's kind of a similar thing to what we can see with possible soft tissue and even organ injuries in a hit like this. As Hunter's moving down the field, everything's going to continue to move, but then the ribs, everything bony is going to stop while all of that force is being transmitted from the ribs through the bones, potentially into his organs, possibly causing injury to intra-abdominal organs or even the lung, like we'll talk about in this video. Completely uncalled for hit, absolutely unnecessary, no place for this type of thing in the game. The fact that this was delayed in terms of Hunter being able to play the rest of the first half, but then having to be taken to the hospital, raises more concern about something like either a lung injury, like a collapsed lung or a bruised lung, or even potentially an abdominal organ injury. We can see here where the hit and the impact comes in. One of the things I thought about was something like an SC joint or a sternoclavicular joint injury, but it looks like the pads from the Colorado State player hit Hunter a little bit more in the sternum, if not down lower, at kind of the lower portion of his rib cage, as opposed to directly on the sternum. So I would be suspecting here that this is more like a soft tissue organ injury rather than something like a bone, a joint, a muscle. From this back view, we can see even a little bit better here. The left shoulder of that Colorado State player comes in. It kind of looks like it hits Hunter square on maybe the lower kind of left mid portion of his thorax, as opposed to hitting him in the head or hitting him in the neck. I would not be as concerned about concussion, even though we see a little bit of whiplash here. I'm thinking more organs and lungs. If we look at our biodigital anatomy tool here, I've highlighted these key organs to talk about. That hit from the Colorado State player looks like it's coming in somewhere right around this area on Hunter. So a lot of that impact is going to be absorbed by his rib cage. The thoracic cage is there to protect the vital organs that sit behind it. But then we got to think about what sits behind it. Of course, you can certainly have something like a rib fracture from a hit like this, and that's definitely going to be painful. But the rib fractures can then transfer enough energy through into the lungs where you can either have a lung collapse, something called a pneumothorax, where air gets into this space and the lung collapses down, or even something like a bruise or a contusion to the lung itself where you can get bleeding that occurs inside the parenchyma of the lung from all of that impact that's coming and hit him. That again could be something that would gradually develop throughout the game and get worse and worse to the point where he would ultimately need to go to the hospital for more medical evaluation. He gets hit square in this area. You can suffer something like a sternal fracture. The heart is sitting directly behind the chest, and thankfully if we were going to see something cardiac, we probably would have by now. But everything, again, sitting here behind the rib cage is potentially at risk. When we get down below the thorax, so now more into the abdomen, we've got, of course, the liver. Liver traditionally sits a little bit more on the right upper side of the abdomen over here. But then we're going to have a couple of important things. Number one, the kidney. We've seen in FIBA, Serbian basketball player, get kidney laceration, ultimately have to have his kidney removed. Andrew Luck, football player, get a kidney injury. And then also the spleen sits in this upper left portion of the abdomen. And all of these are structures that can potentially be injured here with what happened with this type of hit from Hunter. These types of things are usually delayed presentations. It's often one of those things where we assume there's just maybe a bruise, some contusion, part of the aches and pains of playing football, but then as pain persists, pain progresses, things get worse to the point where you say, all right, we've got to go to the hospital, we've got to get evaluated. When we start talking about things like lung injuries, organ injuries, stuff beyond just the more basic, straightforward rib fractures, that's where we certainly get more concerned about just a player's long-term health, because those things can take a long time to recover in and of themselves, and you start worrying about function outside of just the bones, joints, and playing sports. So definitely something very concerning to keep an eye on here for Hunter, and something that could very well affect him down the road the rest of the season, depending on if there, of course, is an injury to something like the lungs or the intra-abdominal organs. But don't forget, sports injuries go beyond just the bones and the joints. We have to think about the organs that sit inside the chest, inside the abdomen, especially when we've got a lot of trauma with a big hit like we saw Hunter take. That's it for the video, everybody. Let me know as always any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.